To set up the game, give each player a merchant stand along with a bag of the matching color to their stand, placing both items in front of them. Choose one player to then act as the banker. The banker will then give coins out to the players, totaling 50 coins in total. How you do it exactly is up to you, but the game recommends you do it as 120, 5 5s, and 5 1s. Make sure that the banker has the rest of the money sitting close by, but not in such a way that he'll mix his own money with the bank's. Next, depending on the number of players, go through the deck and remove every single card that has this +4 symbol in the bottom left corner. Cards with this 4+ symbol can only be used in games where there are 4 players or more. So if I were to be playing a 3-player game, all the cards that are having the +4 marker on them would be put back in the box and would not be used. I, however, am setting up for a 4-player game, so then these cards can stay. Next, you need to decide as a group whether you are going to play with or without the royal goods. There are 3 different types of goods cards: legal goods, contraband, and royal goods. Royal goods are identified with this golden banner down on the bottom here. You may notice that it is also surrounded by a red border, just like the contraband cards. And that is because the royal goods are considered contraband as well. However, if you were to sneak these royal goods by, they will count as multiples of legal goods toward your total amount of goods for that type, which I will get to later on. For example, the rye bread would count as 2 bread at the end of the game. The blue cheese would count as 3 cheese at the end. The pumpernickel bread counts as 3 bread at the end of the game. The golden apples count as 3 apples at the end, and so on and so forth. Now, like I said, you need to decide as a group if you would like to play with or without the royal goods. If you want to play with the royal goods, simply make them as a part of the total goods stack. If you want to play without the royal goods, go through the deck, find all of the royal goods that come with the game, and simply put them back in the box. Once again, if you want to play with the royal goods, make sure you include the ones that have the appropriate symbol on the bottom corner depending on the number of players. So if you were to play this game with a 3-player game, but you want to use the royal goods, go through the deck and make sure all of the royal goods that have the 4+ player symbol on them are removed. Once you've sorted out the cards to match the number of players, and once you've decided whether to play with or without the royal goods, shuffle the remaining cards and place them all face down into a single face down stack. Next, turn over 5 cards from the top of the deck to form the first discard pile. Then turn over another 5 cards from the top of the deck to form a second discard pile. Yes, there are supposed to be 2 discard piles, and the players can examine the cards in the discard piles at any time. Finally, figure out which player among you has the highest value of actual cash on them at the moment, and then give them the sheriff marker. That player will then be the first sheriff. If there is a tie or nobody has anything, then randomly determine who will be the sheriff. Once you have done everything that I have stated, you are ready to begin the first edition base game. I'll go through the setup and the playthrough of the 2 parts that come with the second edition later on. Each round of the game comprises of 5 phases that must be done in the following order: the market, the loading bags, the declaration, the inspection, and the end of the round. One thing to note is that whoever is the sheriff this round will only take part in the inspection and the end of the round. During the market phase, you will get 1 opportunity to discard cards from your hand and redraw. Starting with the player to the left of the sheriff and going around, each player will get 1 turn. On your turn, you can look at the cards in your hand and then choose up to 5 of them to discard. For example, let's say I want to discard these 2. I will then set these aside face down, and then you will draw back up to 6 cards. When you draw back up to 6 cards, you can take from either of the discard piles or the draw pile. One thing to keep in mind, however, you must always draw all the cards from the discard piles before you draw from the draw pile. Once you start drawing from the draw pile, any further cards that you draw must come from the draw pile as well. If you would like to take cards from the discard pile, you must always take them starting with the top card of the discard pile. So for example, if I wanted to take this apple that was the second card down, I would have to take this pepper card into my hand as well. Then I could take the apple card. After you've drawn all of the cards, you will then take the cards that you set aside and place them face up in one of the two discard piles in any order that you choose. Once each player, except for the sheriff, has taken a turn, you will then enter the loading bag phase. During the loading bag phase, all merchants will simultaneously choose what goods that they would like to place into their bags. Simply take the amount of cards that you would like to place into your bag and then simply just place those goods into your bag. You can change your mind as much as you want until you snap the bag closed. Once you snap the bag closed, you cannot change your mind about what is in the bag. You can place between 1 and 5 goods of any type into your bag, but you have to have at least 1 in the bag. Make sure you don't let anyone else see what you put in there. Once everybody has loaded their bags and snapped them closed, you will then enter the third phase, which is the declaration phase. During the declaration phase, you will then declare to the sheriff what is in your bag and pass your bag over to him. However, when you declare how many goods are in your bag, you do not have to tell the truth. But there's 3 exceptions to that. 1, you do have to be honest about how many cards are in your bag. 2, you must declare it as a legal type, and you must declare it as one type of good. For example, I could say in this bag, Sheriff, I have 3 cheese. However, in reality, it could be 2 cheese and a pepper, or it could be 1 cheese and 2 meats, or there could really be no cheese at all in the bag. It all is up to you. One thing to know is that the sheriff is not allowed to look in your bag during the declaration phase. Once each player has declared what is in their bag and has given it to the sheriff, you will then enter the 4th phase, inspection. This is where the sheriff player comes into play. During the inspection phase, you as the sheriff can decide which order of bags you would like to inspect. You can choose to inspect any number of bags that you want. You can even choose to inspect none of the bags at all. Before you inspect a bag, however, you can choose to threaten the bag's owner by various measures, such as maybe doing a little tug on the little flap, or simply feeling around the bag, something like that. That player may then choose to offer you a bribe. That player might then choose to offer you a bribe to not open their bag. A bribe can be just about anything you can think of in any combination. Some of the stuff that you can offer as a bribe include gold from your possession, goods from your stand, whether it is legal or contraband, goods from your bag, again, whether they are legal or contraband, or promises of future favors. One thing to keep in mind, however, is that one thing you cannot offer as a bribe is cards from your hand. Once the sheriff has made a decision, he cannot change his mind. As soon as he chooses to inspect a bag or hand it back, then that is it. He cannot change it. After the sheriff hears your offer and any potential negotiations happen, the sheriff must then decide whether to allow you to pass or to search your bag. If the sheriff allows you to pass, he accepts any bribes that may have been offered to him. If he chooses to inspect the bag, he rejects any offers to bribe him. If the sheriff has allowed you to pass, you will then remove all of the goods that are in your bag. Any legal goods that you have in your bag will then be placed face up in their appropriate location next to your merchant stand. Any contraband that you manage to sneak through will go face down below the contraband section of your merchant stand. Just to clarify, you're actually supposed to tuck these underneath your merchant stand. I'm just placing them here because I'm running out of space. If the sheriff has chosen to inspect your bag, then one of two outcomes will happen. Either the sheriff will find out that you are telling the truth, or that you were lying. If it was revealed that you were lying and you did not have exactly what you claimed to have in your bag, then three things happen. First, all of the goods that you did claim that you had in your bag will be returned to you. All goods that you did not truthfully declare that were in your bag, whether they were contraband or not, are then discarded in one of the two discard piles face up in any order that the sheriff chooses. Those goods have now been confiscated. Finally, the player must pay a fine equal to the penalty amount shown on each goods card that was discarded. For example, this one has a penalty of 4, so that would mean that this merchant must pay 4 gold to the sheriff. However, if the sheriff does inspect your bag and finds out that you were telling the truth about what you had, then the sheriff must pay you the total amount shown on every legal good that is in your bag. For example, this player had declared that there were 3 cheese. The sheriff had inspected it, and sure enough, there were 3 cheese. That means that the sheriff must pay the penalty for each cheese card that was in the bag, so that means that the sheriff then owes this merchant 6 gold, and all of the goods that were from that merchant will then be returned to them. Before we go into the last phase, I do want to talk about the bribery for one more thing. Most of the time when you make a deal with the sheriff, it must be honored no matter what the deal is. This is known as binding. However, there are 2 exceptions to that. One of which is offering goods from your bag. If you allow goods from your bag as part of a bribe to the sheriff and he allows you to pass, then when you actually reveal the goods from your bag, you only have to pay the sheriff the amount of goods that you promised that you actually had in the bag. For example, let's say I said to the sheriff, I am bringing in 3 chickens, and to prove it to you, I am willing to give you one of those chickens. And if he allows you to pass, you will then reveal the amount of goods that are in your bag, and sure enough, you have a chicken, so then you will give that chicken to the sheriff. In another example, let's say this player declared that they had 3 apples in this bag, and had offered one of them to the sheriff as part of the bribe, and the sheriff had accepted it. If that was the case, the player then reveals all the goods that were in the bag, and if that player did not have any of the goods that he promised to give to the sheriff in their bag, then he does not have to give the sheriff anything. The other exception that occurs to bribing the sheriff is promises of future favors. Promises of future favors that take place after this inspection phase are not binding. For example, this player could say to the red player, who is the sheriff, the next time I am sheriff, I will let you pass no matter what. And then purple becomes sheriff. They can choose to inspect red anyway. Once all of the merchant's bags have been returned, whether they have been searched or not, then the round is over. Then the player who has the sheriff marker will pass the marker to their left, and then that player becomes the sheriff for the next round. All players will then draw back up to 6 cards, and then you will begin the next round with the market phase. If at any point you need to draw cards from the draw pile, but it is empty, simply then take all of the cards from the discard pile except for the top 5 of each, shuffle them together to form a new draw pile. Something to keep in mind is that it is possible to run out of gold during the game. If you do this, you cannot offer gold as part of a bribe. If you have to pay a penalty that you owe to the sheriff, but you don't have the money to pay him, you must then instead hand over the amount of goods that you have in your stand, legal goods specifically, equal to the amount that you owe. This is possible then that you will pay more than what you owe to the sheriff. However, you will not get change for it. If you do not have enough legal goods to pay for a fine, you must then hand over contraband to make up the difference. The player who then receives the goods after paying for the fine will then add them to their market stand. If you run out of all goods and contraband to pay a fine, then any debt that you have to pay the fine is considered paid. The game ends immediately after all of the players have had a chance to be the sheriff a certain amount of times depending on the number of players. Once that happens, any cards that are still in your hand are worth nothing. Whenever the game ends, you will then determine the king and queen bonuses. What that means is that on the side of your merchant stands shows each of the 4 goods, as well as some smaller numbers shown with each good. The golden number that is next to each of the good is considered the king's bonus, and the silver number is considered the queen's bonus. What this means is that each player will count how many of these types of goods that they have in their merchant stand at the end of the game. Whoever has the most of that type of good will then get the king's bonus, and whoever has the second most will get the queen's bonus. If there is a tie for the king's bonus, then add the king and queen bonus together and then divide it up equally to the tied players, rounding down, and then do not award the queen bonus. If there is a tie for the queen bonus, then simply divide the points equally among the tied players, rounding down. Once the king and queen bonuses have been awarded for all of the 4 legal goods, you will then determine your final score. When determining your final score, you will finally reveal all of the contraband that you have snuck through. You will then earn points equal to the total value of all of the goods that you have in your merchant stand, both legal and contraband, all of the gold that you have left at the end of the game, as well as any king or queen bonuses that you have gotten. Count up your total score, and whoever has the most points is the winner. If there is a tie, then the tied player who has the most legal goods in their stand wins. If there's still a tie, then the tied player who has the most contraband wins. That's basically everything for the first edition, but there's a few optional rules that you might want to know before starting your first game. One of which I've already gone over, which is the royal goods, so I'll skip that one. Another is removing cards before the game. You can choose to, at the beginning of the game, before you set up, to take 10 cards from the main deck of cards and simply just remove them from the game, so that nobody knows what cards were removed. If you choose to do this, return the cards that have been removed from the game to the box without looking at them. You can choose to, instead of having a hand limit of 6 cards, you can choose to have a hand limit of 7 cards. The third thing, which I actually don't have here to show you, is the promo cards. Promo cards can be identified as having a blue banner, and these can be added to the game without having to take any cards out. The final optional rule is the inspection time limit. When you do this, the sheriff is given 1 minute for each of the merchants that are in the game. For example, in a 4-player game, like I have here, the sheriff gets 3 minutes to decide how many and which merchants' bags that he wants to inspect. If you run out of time, any merchant's bags that you have not inspected must then be returned to their owners, and they must be allowed to pass without having to bribe you. So that's everything you'll need in order to play the first edition. Now we'll go into what you need for the second edition. Keep in mind, I'm using the rulebook from the Merriman expansion to explain all the parts you'll need for the second edition, so there is a slight possibility that the rulebook between the expansion and the second edition itself could be different from each other, so keep that in mind. If you have the second edition and you're going to be playing with 6 players, then there are a few changes that are going to be made, both with the setup and with how the game plays out. After all the players have been dealt their good cards, place all the rest of them in a face-down stack, but do not create any discard piles. Take the sheriff marker and place it back in the box. You will be using these deputy markers instead. Shuffle this deck of deputy cards and place them face down in the playing area, and finally place this booty tile next to the deputy cards. When playing the game as a 6-player game, each round will comprise of 4 merchants and 2 deputies. At the beginning of each round, draw 2 cards from the top of the deputy stack, and then whosever icon is showing on the cards will then be given the deputy markers, and they will be considered the deputies for that round. The deputies will mostly be working as a team, but they can sometimes work on their own. The round then goes through the 5 phases as normal, but with a few key changes. The first change is during the market phase. After all of the players have had a chance to exchange cards for new cards, one of the deputies will then take all of the discarded cards and place them face up next to the stack to form a discard pile. You will then play through phase 2 and 3 like you would in a normal game. During the 4th phase, the inspection phase, the deputies will be working together and they can freely talk and negotiate with the merchants. However, there are 3 possibilities that can happen. Either both sheriffs agree to allow a merchant to pass. If both deputies allow the merchant to pass, then the merchant opens the goods from their bag and collects them as usual. However, if the deputies had accepted a bribe to allow the merchant to pass, that bribe will then be placed on the booty tile. The second is both deputies agreeing to open the merchant's bag. If both of them agree and discover that the merchant was lying about what they claim to have, then the money that is paid for the fine is placed on the booty tile. In this example, the fine was 4, so that would mean that the 4 coins is then placed on the booty tile. If, however, the merchant was telling the truth, then each deputy must pay half of the penalty toward the merchant. For example, if this player claimed to have 3 bread, and they did in fact have 3 bread when they were searched, then that would mean this deputy and this deputy would each be paying 3 gold to the merchant. The third possibility is that one of the deputies agrees to let them pass, but the other wants to search the bag. If that is the case, then the one who wants to search the bag acts on their own. They will then open the bag, determine if the merchant was lying or not, and whether they were lying or not, all of the money that gets paid to the sheriff will go directly to that one deputy who searched the bag. And if searching the bag revealed that they were telling the truth, then only the deputy who searched the bag has to pay the penalty. One thing to note is that the 2 deputies can, if they want, search 2 separate merchants simultaneously. At the end of the inspection phase, the 2 deputies will then split all of the money and any goods cards that were placed on the booty tile. Any leftover money or cards must be discarded unless the 2 deputies can agree on how to distribute it. The final change is at the end of the round. After all the players have gone through the 5 phases and have drawn back up to 6 cards, you will then assign new deputies by drawing the top 2 cards from the deputy stack and giving the deputy markers to whoever has been drawn from the deputy stack. Once the deputy stack runs out, then that means that everybody will have had the chance to be the deputy once. If at the end of the round the deputy stack is empty, simply just shuffle the cards to form a new stack. The game will then end immediately once you have run through the deputy stack 3 times. Deal the king and queen bonuses as normal, and whoever has the most points wins. The other variant that comes with the second edition is the black market cards. To set up the black market, simply just place up the 3 pairs of the black market cards that come with the game so that everybody can see them with the higher value of that card on top. For gameplay purposes, during the inspection phase of the game, which is phase 4, any player can then claim one of these black market cards. The black market cards are a way for a player to take contraband that they've smuggled through during the course of the game and exchange it for extra gold. To claim a black market card, the merchant must have a 3 of a kind of the type of contraband that they would like to claim for the black market. For example, I have 3 mead, so I could exchange them for this mead black market card. It is possible for the players to smuggle contraband over the course of several rounds until they can get the trio of cards that they need to claim the black market card. Whenever you claim a black market card, reveal the cards that you are using to claim the black market card. You will then remove those cards from the game and then place the black market card face down in your contraband pile. The first player to collect a set of 3 contraband will take the higher value black market card. The second player to gather that set will take the lower value. It is possible for the same player to collect both of the black market cards for the same good, provided they have snuck through 6 contrabands of the same type. There is no limit to how many black market cards you can have. At the end of the game, you will score the points on all of the black market cards that are in your contraband pile. And that's everything you need to know in order to play the first and second edition of Sheriff of Nottingham. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. If you want to know how to play more games, or if you just want more videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more tutorials, reviews, and unboxings. Thank you all as always so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.